Okay. Hello and welcome to another edition of Fide's podcast. This is a special edition. I have the a privilege of talking to a previous guest, Alix Aharon, who has been on before. She is also known as the gender mapper, in which she maps out throughout the world places that are clinics, hospitals that are doing gender reassignment surgery. And in getting to know her, I've known that she is from Israel. She lives in Israel, and obviously, with what's going on right now in Israel, with these horrible attacks from Hamas, I checked in with her to make sure she was okay, her and her family, and thankfully they are. And so I'd asked her to come on to talk about what's going on because I honestly don't feel very confident that here in the U.S. we're getting the facts. So we'll just talk about this. So Alix, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And just so that everybody understands, like I never in a million years ever wanted to talk about where I live or any kind of political situation. I always really wanted to focus on women and girls and obviously what's happening with gender clinics. But what is happening is related to women and girls. Um,
Hmm.
Women and girls have been abducted. Uh, they've been raped in social media, and their bodies have been paraded in the streets of Gaza, and people have been spitting on them. And by the way, I just want to say that I'm not coming at this from any political angle. Obviously, I have my own political beliefs, but I'm not inserting this into here. I would I just want to tell you really kind of the rundown because obviously, as a Hebrew speaker, I get a lot of Hebrew media. I also get a lot of translated Arabic media. And obviously, I have a lot of contacts and friends who are really involved and have been, we've all been touched by what's happened over the past 3 days. We've all been touched.
Hmm.
I I feel suicidal. I'm not a person that's ever going to hurt themselves, but I don't know what to do, and I'm not scared. I'm not afraid, but I'm I it it hurts. It really hurts to see girls that could have been me. I could have been at a party, right? Why not? I go to parties. Um, these girls that were kidnapped and murdered, they were just women like me. They weren't involved in anything. They were just trying to have a good time. Um, and the mothers, obviously, I don't want to diminish the innocent men as well that've been killed here, right? I'm not trying to do that. I'm just saying
Hmm.
that seeing women being dragged by their hair, it cuts in a different way. Obviously, I'm a woman. I think the worst thing really that could ever happen to me is that I would be abducted by ISIS, ISIS militants. It's literally the worst thing from my worst, darkest nightmare that could ever happen to me. And to know that that's what's happened to these regular ladies, regular girls, I I really don't have the words. And I hope nobody ever. I hope we none of us ever experience this ever again, right? I hope that this is the last time.
So for some of us who obviously are, kind of, we're here in the US and we're isolated to one degree or another. We depend on the media. Is this something that was out of the blue? Like I heard someone call this the 9/11 for Israel, where, the morning of 9/11 people woke up, it was a normal day. There was no one expecting anything. And then all of a sudden, obviously what happened, and was this obviously there's always the risk of horrible violence in Israel against the Israeli people. But was there any kind of warning? Was there anything that was going on or anything that happened that caused, not a justifiable cause, but what caused Hamas to, make the moves that they did?
Mhm. Well, Hamas are obviously going to say their reasons for it, right? Their reasons for it are, I mean, Islamic Jihad, obviously, right? That's one of the motivations, and obviously there's no secret here that there is a very long conflict, right, between the Jews and the Arabs. But I don't want to get into that, right? That's a subject for another day, and I'm never going to
Hmm.
speak about it because it's not what I speak about, right? I'll leave that to the real analysts and experts. But to say that this was not expected, I think is not accurate, right? Um, I I think that we'll talk about this for 100 years, maybe, how this happens, how I don't know, maybe if the IDF was just overwhelmed or they they got caught with their pants down. Um, I I can't I actually can't in my mind figure out how this happened. It's so it I mean, like, the idea that 1,500, they're saying there were only 1,500, like, terrorists. That's not a lot of terrorists if you can, compare that to the IDF. And just that they were able to break down this really ridiculous border fence, and it was a coordinated attack, right? It didn't happen in one place. If you can imagine, let's say people were going to attack the U.S. from Canada, right? But they didn't just come in from one angle. They came in from the western border, the eastern border, the kind of the border in the middle, and it was an extremely well planned out attack. Of course, first off, they hit the rave. So basically, there was this like
Hmm.
massive rave going on in the desert.
Right.
Like very, people that are dancing all night, from the morning till the evening, like 24 hours, big, big, big party. And these people, also it was on the Jewish holiday of Simchat Torah, which is the end of Sukkot. So, and it was also the Shabbat, right? So we're talking like these are big holidays right here where everybody is kind of like off work and whatever. So you had obviously the attack that happened in the rave. That's where the majority of the women were kidnapped, unfortunately. Because you see these pictures of these extremely attractive, beautiful. I'm not saying one
Hmm.
one victim is more of a victim because they're beautiful. I'm just saying these women were very, very, very beautiful. Um, and you saw these obviously these images on social media, them being put on the backs of motorcycles and taken away, and some of them who's covered in blood. It was very obvious that she had been raped,
Hmm.
um, from the kind of blood stains on her trousers and other. So you have that, but then also you have the attacks that were actually happening on the kibbutzim. So a kibbutz basically is like a community that lives communally, kind of thing. They have it's kind of going back to the old days when Israel was like a very socialist country. So you had the attacks on there where the terrorists seemingly overcame uh, the security that they had at the actual kibbutz, and people locked themselves because it was also a missile strike at the same time. So you've
Hmm.
also got that kind of, if you can imagine, you're dissociated, right? If I'm going to put a really loud, it, when there's a missile strike, you have like 15. The people that live in the really at the border, they have like 15 seconds to get to shelter before there's a direct impact or the Iron Dome like knocks it out of the sky. So they use that time and that kind of chaos to infiltrate, right? But it's hard for me to even imagine that the IDF wasn't. Listen, by the way, I don't have any connections. I don't have any secret info, right, from the IDF. They're not sharing any of their info with me. I get my
Hmm.
info from the Hebrew News and personal WhatsApp groups that I'm a part of, right? And I'm sorry if my thoughts are very uncoordinated today. I'm I'm in mourning. I don't really have a better term for it. I'm in an immense amount of pain. Um, you know, so it's just sorry, Jerry, if I'm not
Hmm.
making complete
No.
complete sense here. I'm just having a stream of consciousness about what's what's
Yeah.
going on.
Well, in what people need to realize, so we're not going to give your specific location, but you're in Jerusalem, you're in Israel where you live. It's a fairly small country, but you are safe, and that is good, and that's what we're certainly happy about. But it is got to be very very difficult to be living there with all that's going on and what all that goes on and the dangers against the Israeli people all the time. Not even in cases like this. This is really tough. So you had sent me an image or something. I think it was an image that you had gotten of some babies. It's hard to even speak because what you're seeing with what these terrorists have done, you know, it's indiscriminate. It's against as you mentioned, young girls, babies now. There's no, they're not taking a hill in, in a strategic battle or something. They're going after the
Yeah,
most innocent and vulnerable. Maybe give some insight into what's going on because people
yeah.
hear a lot of things and we don't know what's really going on.
Yeah, so the news cycle is very, very short. People lose interest in stories very quickly. So people heard about kind of the rave and what happened there, but what people didn't realize is that there was a 48-hour siege going on in some of these communities. So it's only right now that the international press and the IDF have actually managed to get into these communities and see the carnage. So yeah, they found a whole bunch of people burned alive, and babies that had their throats slit, basically beheaded in their cribs, um, and just kind of I mean, 40 of them, right? So
Hmm.
it's we're now up to like the death toll for the Israelis is up to like 1,200. So if you can imagine, there's only like there's 7 million Jews that live here, 9 million total citizens. You can imagine, and by the way, this attack has killed a lot of Muslims, a
Hmm.
lot of our citizens that are Muslims, right? So it obviously it is an attack on the Jewish people and the Israeli people, but
Hmm.
the Hamas just want the numbers at the end of the day. So they've killed a whole bunch of Muslims as well, in addition, who are Israeli citizens. Um, and I want to acknowledge that as well, right?
Hmm.
That I'm also feeling the loss of them because there are citizens, are people too. Um,
Hmm.
and so sorry. So yeah, so the killing of the babies, and also the attacks that are coming as well from the north. Like I really don't. I've been living in Israel for 20 years, right? I've gone through the first, the 2006 Lebanon War, second Lebanon War, Gaza wars, small kind of incursions. Obviously, sadly, there was a terrorist attack where I was, you know, a year ago. Sadly, 2 years ago, I had a near direct. I don't want to really reveal where I live, but like there was a direct impact of a missile that was really kind of close to my house. But this is a different ball game right now. Like
Hmm.
I really don't know how this is going to play out. I'm not scared, but this is certainly different, right? We're when you're exposed to kind of like jihadist strikes that happen periodically, you kind of get used to it. 10 people die, it's a big tragedy. 20 people die, it's a huge tragedy. But and it's sad to say, you really do. You just kind of get used to it. It becomes part of the routine. But this is something very, very different. And I don't know. I Obviously this whole thing is also funded by Iran. It's not a secret that Iran is funding Hamas. They're very
Hmm.
proud of that fact, right?
Yeah.
So who knows what's going to happen here? Who knows who's going to get dragged to the fight, kicking and screaming? Um, I think if you're a person of faith, I think now is a really good time to dig deep into that. Because I don't know.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have I never
So
in a
two
million years thought that this could happen.
Yeah. So two areas I want to ask you about, and then I'd
Please.
I'd like to finish up just because I don't want to keep you on too long. So the first is with these types of attacks in which they're terrorist cells, they're individuals who may be hiding out here or there. When Israel
Yeah.
retaliates and they go after them, where who are they hitting? Do they obviously know where they're congregating? Do they have if they're shooting missiles, obviously they're going after those missile sites. What is the counter attack entail in cases like this?
Hmm. You mean like small, kind of like small fish, people who are just,
Yeah, I mean, where do they know to go after, right? To the Israeli army,
well,
do they know, oh,
oh, okay,
let's,
fine. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Okay, okay. I mean, I don't really have no idea how the IDF. I mean, we all know how the IDF collects intelligence. It's basically through snitches on the ground, right? It's through intelligence, infiltrating the communities, infiltrating the cells. I don't think that's a secret, right? That's where they get a lot of their intel from, is from penetrating those cells. But generally speaking, if there's a terrorist attack here, the terrorist ends up getting hunted and killed, and kind of that's like kind of the end of it. I mean, obviously there are areas where there can be like prolonged fighting, perhaps in Jenin or perhaps in Nablus, but the IDF, always has control of the situation. This is the first time I've ever seen that. I don't think the IDF had control of the situation.
Hmm.
For 12 hours, there were people who were in their kibbutzes who were screaming for help. And you think about the might of the IDF, like everything that the IDF has. These people were like on social media, and it was like all being shared in WhatsApp groups live, right? So
Hmm.
and like we're a very small country, so it only takes like a friend to know a friend to know a friend who's there basically. um and we just saw like people were saying like we've been they're burning. People were like locking themselves in their like every Israeli house has like a bomb shelter room from rocket attacks. So people were locking themselves, like kind of barricading themselves inside of the bomb shelter. Um, but unfortunately, people were setting, the terrorists were setting fire to their houses and trying to smoke them out, right? So you had that all playing out on social media. But in terms like I'm not a military strategist, right? I
Hmm.
see what the I get my news from Ynet. But I don't know what's going to happen here. Um,
Hmm.
I the mood, the kind of the feeling that we're getting from our politicians is like prepare yourself for a very long battle, right?
Hmm.
Um, Whatever that means. And also I just want to kind of preface this by saying that for the past kind of like year, we've been in battle, we've been embroiled in a massive culture war and in a massive political overturn, kind of political. I don't want to call it like political rioting, but there has been definitely, how like in the US you had your riots basically in
Hmm.
2020, people were
Yeah.
extremely hyped up, right? About all various types of issues. So that's really been going on here as well for the past kind of like year. And I am not politically invested in either movement, right? I'm extremely focused on what I'm focused on. So I have friends that are like in the right, I have friends that are in like the far left. And I've been to like both sides of the protest, just as a person to like exactly to basically say that I was there. So this is all also on the
Hmm.
backdrop of this, that there's an enormous amount of kind of trouble that's going on in Israeli society, from the far left and from the right. And it's like, who's going to win the battle of hearts and minds? Exactly the same, really, that's going on in the US, because it gets
Hmm.
imported, by the way. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
I'm not gonna come after you for it, but
Yeah.
the US does import all of its bad ideas to Israel. And I mean, all of those things now that, like, because of what we're going through, they seem really, really small. But I know that they're actually not small. And I'm very, I want to let everybody know that um, when things start to kind of go back to normal, whenever that happens, I'm still really, really involved in the fight against child pornography and child prostitution and gender ideology. Like, it's still extremely, extremely important to me.
Yep.
And it's, you know,
Yeah.
and and my heart is really broken. But we're gonna recongregate and get back on track,
Yeah.
get and figure this out.
Yeah.
It's
It
really
is.
crazy, Jerry. I'm like the kind of person that never shuts up and always has the right thing to say. And I'm just kind of without words because I've just felt this tsunami of emotion all day, and you know, fear, and uncertainty and
Yeah.
tragedy. So you're
Well,
getting. I haven't spoken to anybody else, by the way. So you're the only guy I've spoken to.
no,
So
I
this is like a
appreciate it.
therapy session for me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I think, what we need to realize is in these types of cases with these terrorist groups is we're dealing with pure evil. There is pure evil,
Yeah.
demonic going on here. It's not, there's nothing justifying this, no matter what, Hamas or Hezbollah or any of these groups have to say. There's no debating it. This is pure evil, pure hate. And as we know, the people of Israel live with this potential every single day, and this is horrible evil. So the last area I want to ask you about, and actually it works perfectly with the direction I'm trying to really focus my show on, and that is being sort of a refuge for parents and students who are being indoctrinated in universities, because I experience it myself with my kids and all that's going on with all the indoctrination, whether it's gender indoctrination and ideology or it's just in general. I want to be a sort of a place where people can go to get the facts and get the truth and expose teachers, professors, schools that are indoctrinating. And one of the things that caught my attention was that right as after these attacks happened, you had a number of top tiered universities here in the United States
Oh,
that were blaming Israel. They were doing protests and they were saying some horrible things about Israel, blaming Israel for all that's going on. How does that make you an Israeli, someone who lives there, has experienced this and has experienced this now? How does it make you feel when, especially these elitists from these universities,
yeah.
immediately, without even any evidence, immediately blame Israel?
Well, I think first of all, I just want to say I think everybody is entitled to free speech, right? I think that if you want to scream in the street something, unsavory, I think that's free speech, and I'm very lucky that I live in a country that has free speech. But um, listen, I don't. Yeah, the whole kind of Israel, like, Palestine thing has really been swept up in the culture war, for some unaccountable reason. I don't like, this is not a leftist issue. Hamas are not a leftist issue.
Mhm.
ISIS are not a leftist issue. I For me, it's blind tribalism. It's like, you can't. It's it, it's like the people who were saying on CNN when the big riots were going on, and there was burning buildings in the background. They were going, it's mostly peaceful, guys, mostly peaceful. It's just pure and utter gaslighting. Um, and I listen, if you're a Jew, like in America or in Europe, just leave. I don't know why you would be staying. I grew up in Europe. I just left when I was like 17. I don't I genuinely don't know why you would stay in such a hostile atmosphere. Um, I listen. The whole kind of like Hamas thing. People seem to think that these are like, theater kids, right? That they're like, oh gosh, they're just like us. They really care about social justice and blah blah blah.
Mhm.
And it's like, you really should like examine that a little bit better. And I don't really care if you or are pro-Israel or pro-Palestine. Like, you do you. You do whatever you think is right. You whatever. But this kind of like cheerleading for Hamas, I cannot go there. It's so
Mhm.
unspeakably tribal. It's so unspeakably like really disgusting. Um, I it, like aren't sensible leftists really anti burning women and kidnapping them and raping them in the streets.
Mhm.
I go. I actually saw several accounts, especially like Mia Khalifa, who's an ex porn star that I actually quite like her. Celebrating um celebrating women being handcuffed, live streaming. They were live streaming this, celebrating women being handcuffed and put on the backs of motorbikes and driven off to Gaza to be raped. Um, I really do think that's demonic, and I think this is all going to be a very big wake up call for the world. We've all had sadly in the West, we've all had our experience of extreme, Islamist jihad. You had 9/11, you had the other attacks. You understand it, and I just think that I think this is maybe going to be a wake up call for the world, but I'm not sure. And by the way, the thing that I care about really the most is
Mhm.
getting our girls back, getting our hostages back. And if you're a person who's a believer, I really want you to pray for pray for the release of these innocent people, especially the women and children. Just we It's unspeakable that there's 100 missing women and girls and children. It's just unspeakable, and we have no idea what's happened to them. And in my heart, like a really sick part, not a sick part, but like a very rational part of me wonders, is it better if they're just dead? Because then they're
Mhm.
they're not suffering this, unstoppable torture. And that's a terrible thought to have, by the way. That's a really
Mhm.
sick thought that you're thinking to yourself, do I actually kind of wish that this person
Yeah.
has been put out of their misery? I really don't want to think like that. But I'm, I don't know. My heart's really in pieces.
Yep.
My
Well,
mind is in
again,
pieces as well.
yeah, and understandably so. And just it's also, after 10 o'clock your time, just so people know, it's 3:28 here in East Coast time in the US. So you stayed up, well, maybe not late. It's probably hard for you to sleep. But you just know
I
that
haven't slept in 3 days.
I'm sure, just
Slept
know
in
that
three
we're
days.
praying
Yeah.
for you. And I ask everybody to pray for the people of Israel, all the lives there, especially those that are missing. We hope that they come back. And yes, it is a wake up call. And for any of you who are having, God forbid, your professors tell your children that this is anything but evil on the part of Hamas, make sure that you stand up for what is right and what is true. So, Alix Aharon, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about your experiences there in Israel. Again, we're praying for you guys and hoping all the best. And make sure we'll keep tabs and make sure you and your family are doing well. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry.